Hey, it's another day where we are alive and so is public health. I'm Jonathan Lyle Sexton. Welcome to Better Together. Before we start today, this episode includes conversations about suicide, PTSD, trauma, and mental health challenges facing veterans and first responders. If that's something you need to step away from today, that's okay. Public health will still be here when you get back. If you or a loved one are facing a mental health crisis, please call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. I want to start with something a little uncomfortable. We are a society that is excellent at honoring service. We do parades, ceremonies, the standing ovation at the airport terminal. We do flags beautifully. We do the uniforms. The thank you for your service delivered with complete sincerity by people who couldn't pick out where we have even fought wars on a map. We are very, very good at the visible part of honoring service. But there's an invisible part. There's an after part. You know, the part where someone comes home and has to figure out how to be a regular human being again after their entire nervous system spent years operating at a completely different frequency. See, that part tends to make society suddenly feel their phone buzz and avoid hard conversations. And I don't say that to be cynical about people. I say it because public health runs into exactly this dynamic constantly. We are excellent at crisis response. We throw enormous resources at acute moments. Ambulances, ERs, emergency task force. We have awareness ribbons for everything in an impressive array of colors. Because trauma doesn't really care whether the mission ended. No, it doesn't care if the deployment is over or the shift has ended, if the badge got turned in. No, and neither does the nervous system. It just quietly keeps going like a car alarm nobody can figure out how to turn off. Military service, law enforcement, EMS, firefighters, dispatchers, these professionals specifically train people to override their own survival instincts, to stay operational under conditions that would send most humans straight to the floor. You know, it's useful when you're trying to save someone's life, but it's less useful when you're trying to go to sleep or watch your kids play soccer in a crowded area. And here is the brutal irony at the center of all of this. The very qualities that make someone exceptional at high-stakes service are often the same qualities that make it hardest to ask for help. Self-reliance, endurance, the ability to push through, compartmentalize, handle it yourself, keep moving, process later. See, that strategy works until one day it really doesn't. See, this episode is not about the crisis, but the response to it. Because something remarkable has been happening in New Hampshire over the last several years, region by region, coalition by coalition. People have been quietly building systems designed to keep veterans and first responders connected to each other, to community, to care, before they hit that breaking point. Connecting people with their communities and their neighbors, you know, it's the same neighbors that we talked about that lower heart disease and other risk factors last episode. Bet you didn't think we were going to have so many callbacks on this show, but we do. So you got to watch every episode, and we desperately need the views. But anyway, one of the people helping lead that work, you know, the connecting people to people, ran 222 miles down the length of the state last fall to make sure people were paying attention. That's 222 miles on foot over 30 days. I need everyone to really sit with that number because I personally consider a victory when I park at the back of the parking lot just to get a few extra steps, let alone run a mile, let alone 222 of them on purpose in New Hampshire in October. It's time for a pulse check. All right, it's stats time. I'm going to do what I always do, which is walk you into some hard numbers and then insist that understanding them is more useful than avoiding them. You're welcome. You may have heard this statistic, 22 veterans a day connected to suicide. You may not have. Most of our team hadn't. But according to our research, it became a brand, a rallying cry, a number that people put on t-shirts and truck decals. And don't get me wrong, the rallying was warranted. It pointed at something real and catastrophic. The newer national data actually puts the figure closer to 17 veteran suicides per day, based on 2025 numbers from the VA's most recent annual report, which still an absolute catastrophe. There is no version of this where we do updated math and breathe easier. The point of the 22 a day number was never really the number. It was the dailiness of it. It was the relentlessness of it. The fact that it is happening right now, today, while we record this podcast and while you listen. So the math got updated, but the emergency did not. Here's what the data also tells us. Veterans make up about 8% of the U.S. population, but account for somewhere between 13 to 14% of all suicide deaths nationwide. And the suicide rate for veterans, 34 out of every 100,000 of them, is roughly double the rate for non-veteran adults. Among veterans aged 18 to 44, suicide is the second leading cause of death. That's only behind unintentional injuries such as drug overdoses and car accidents. In the same age bracket that fought the wars that made these people veterans, suicide is the second leading cause of death. But here is the number that I keep coming back to because I think it tells the most important story. Nearly half of veterans who died by suicide had not received any VA health or benefit services in the prior year. That's half. Gone. Not in any system, not raising any flag, not showing up anywhere that a data analyst could find them. We call this the invisible population because it's the hardest problem in the room. You can't intervene when you can't find someone. This isn't a healthcare access failure alone, though it is partly that. It's a connection failure. It's an isolation problem. A what happens after the structure disappears problem. Because the military gives people something that most civilian lives struggle to replicate. It gives them a mission, a unit, a clear sense of purpose and belonging. You know who you are. You know where to be. You know who's counting on you. And then one day, it's gone. The world just keeps going loudly in directions that make no particular sense, and you're supposed to go buy a Keurig and figure out what LinkedIn is and be fine about it. The nervous system, for the record, though, it doesn't take that transition well. It doesn't think it was adequately planned. This is where community infrastructure actually matters. Not as a nice to have, but as a public health intervention. Because belonging, real and true belonging, not the motivational poster version, is one of the strongest protective factors we have against the kind of isolation that leads people to do an irreversible act. New Hampshire has 9 regional veteran coalitions working specifically on veteran suicide prevention and community connection. And there's numerous other VSOs, or veteran service organizations, as you'll hear throughout this episode, helping out the populations. And one of those is based right here in the Lakes region. It's Camp Resilience. This is not a national awareness campaign. This is not a profile picture filter. It's not someone's uncle changing his profile picture for 2 weeks to a soldier saluting a flag and considering the matter resolved. No, it's local help, right here. It's your neighbors building something on purpose. And today's guest has been one of the architects of it. Today's guest is Jeff Ladieu, retired captain from the New Hampshire State Police, former U.S. Army Ranger with Special Operations Command, executive director of the Patriot Resilient Leader Institute, also known as Camp Resilience. And he's currently pursuing his license in clinical mental health counseling because apparently retirement sounded a little too relaxing. Jeff and his team work with veterans, first responders, and families dealing with trauma, stress, transition, and recovery through retreats, peer support, outdoor therapeutic experiences, and coalition building across New Hampshire. He's also someone deeply rooted in this community. He and his wife, Kim, raised their family right here in the Lakes region. Mm-hmm. I love that. So last fall, you ran 22 miles across the state of New Hampshire to raise awareness for veteran suicide prevention, which, again, I mentioned it earlier. I need everyone to understand that I complain when I park too far away from Market Basket, and you decided to run 222 miles. Yeah. So, Jeff, welcome to Better Together.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about Camp Resilience and the work you do, and just kind of a little bit about who you are in general?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Great to talk about Camp Resilience. We brought our mascot. You can't see her, but she's on the floor. She's a 3-year-old black lab. She's in English. And she has one job. She does it very well. She puts smiles on people's faces. So everybody knows Layla, but I understand I do walk in her shadow. So there's not a lot of name shouting, just Layla. And hey, what's your name again? So she does a great job. She works with veterans and first responders. And we visit the veterans home in Tilton probably twice a month at least.
Oh my gosh.
They love her. They absolutely love her. So Camp Resilience was an idea back in 2011. So you had our founding chair, he's a retired lieutenant colonel, spent a few years in group in the SF teams, ODA teams, back in the day, West Point grad, and he said, hey, he saw a monoskier coming down Gunstock and said, we can do so much here for our veterans and first responders. We have to provide them something. Thus, the Camp Resilience was born. The idea was based off a white paper from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and it essentially modeled a 3-prong approach, and that's the peer-to-peer experiential learning and life skill activities. Mm-hmm. So we're not actually doing therapy, right? A modality, of therapy, but we're not coming in to do like EMDR therapy.
Yeah.
It's more of a peer-to-peer based program, right? And so with that, we've been pushing programs through since 2014. We started running our first therapeutic programs. These are 3 to 4 day retreats, more or less, and they encompass off that 3-prong approach I just told you about. We welcome first responders, military, veterans, and their families, active, retired, Vietnam era, all the way up to the global war on terror. So there's a diverse spectrum there, as well as a diverse program that we offer. So we offer equine assisted programs. We offer military sexual trauma programs. We offer couple retreats. We offer bushcraft retreats. This week we're running a first responder retiree retreat over at Gunstock Inn. And so we're partnered with a lot of our local organizations, which is great, right? That helps bring that community and inclusion into the Granite State. And so we leverage the scenic beauty of New Hampshire, and we'll actually bleed out of New Hampshire this year in 2026. We'll be running an equine program in the state of Vermont. So that'll be great. Yeah, just over the New Hampshire line up in Lancaster. So we're really excited about that as well. But yeah, our partnership, whether it's Forge VFR, Shift Counseling, or Wounded Warriors Project, all the VSOs in the state and in New England we're partnered with, to include the Red Sox Foundation, the Bruins Foundation, the New England Patriots Foundation, right? They like to pay tribute to our veterans as well. So really fortunate and lucky to be part of this organization. Our board is surrounded by top exec leaderships from the military, from your officer, general officers, all the way up to your 4 stars, to include CFOs, COOs, financial gurus, right? Everybody that wants to pay it forward and pay it back, and has a passion, with our mission, with our military veterans and first responders. So very happy to be here. This is my 2nd year as the executive director. We're certainly growing as an organization, which is why they've invited, we have 4 full-time staff now.
Oh my God.
This was primarily started with strictly volunteer boards and boards of advisors, and so they've grown. The past 3 to 4 years, they hired a consultant out of Rhode Island to say, hey, if we're going to hire staff positions to help this organization continue thriving and growing because of the need, what do we do and what do we need? So after the consultation, they looked at definitely an executive director, a program developer, an admin, and then a grant writer. So that consists of 4 full-time staff, and they're the ones that make it happen so that I can do things like this, right? And do our
They take care of the day-to-day while you get to go have fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm born and bred right here in New Hampshire, right in the Granite State. I grew up in Hooksett, grew up on the Merrimack, down by Roby's Country Store. Mr. and Mrs. Roby used to feed us every day, all day, right? We'd hop on the train, take it up to Bow, walk back. We'd put our change on the tracks, flatten it out. We eat our penny candy, and everybody knew everybody in Hooksett. So met my wife at that time. When you came out of middle school, you attended various high schools. If you were on one side of the river, you went to Central. On the other side, you went to West, and then a handful went to private schools and then Concord. So that's where I met my lovely bride, 1980 something. I looked at her, never looked at anybody the same. So very blessed there as well, with a great family and support network. And we've been together ever since. We have 2 adult young men now, and we've rolled north ever since. So now we're in the Lakes region, which is where we raised our family.
Yeah. It sounds like your roots are here.
For sure.
Right? And you've built up your life, your career around supporting Granite Staters and exactly where they are. How does your career in the military, the state police, play into your heart for this mission at Camp Resilience? Obviously, firsthand experience in some cases, but what did you see when you were serving with your peers and stuff that you really made you say, like, you know what, they're going to need help, and they need help currently, right? And I want to go and figure out my place in that.
Yeah. Thank you. Great question. I'm a 3rd generation veteran. My father was Vietnam. His father was World War II. My grandfather. So I grew up in a very patriotic family. the passion has always run through my veins, and I was very blessed to be in a wonderful organization in the military that really thrived on leadership, right, and resilience. And those are the type of units in USASOC and SOCOM, and I think that was a wonderful stepping stone into the state police, right? And then amongst the state police here in New Hampshire, again, surrounded by more great leadership, right, and resilience. However, as you progress throughout your career, things that you're exposed to that are not the norm, right, those traumas that you're exposed to, and we call that, that the polyvagal theory of your parasympathetic system in overdrive all the time when you're at these fatal car crashes. And then, of course, I spent a good portion of my career in major crime, working homicides, high-profile cases, officer-involved shootings. And so those types of things that you're exposed to, we know in this profession, right, that we have to look out for our mental health and wellness. So with the military and then law enforcement included, I still get phone calls of teammates, right, that I've lost to the battle of PTS and suicide, and that begins to wear and grow on you. And so the passion to save lives because of the trauma and these silent battles that these men and women are fighting is something that I hold very near and dear, right? I'm tired of the phone calls. I've lost a lot of team members and teammates, military and law enforcement, to suicide in the battle of PTS. So to be more aware and bring awareness to the community is something in this chapter that I'm in now, post-retirement, that I enjoy paying it forward. So if you look at the numbers based off, what statistics or research you're looking at, I mean, we're looking at close to 7,000 suicides a year from our veterans, which is just, one is too many. One is too many. Thus the run last year. We'll bring that back this year. These are fundraising events. Obviously, we're a nonprofit here at Camp Resilience, and they say an idea in the nonprofit realm without funding is a hallucination. Yep. So we went out and ran, right? One of our partners are the Three Rangers Foundation, so that's why that run consists from October 1 through October 10th, right? That significant battle of Mogadishu back in 1993, October 3rd. There's a lot of Moog Mile events that they run throughout the country, nationwide, really, and so that's why we picked those dates. Yeah. But we take 10 days, we dedicate each day to an event or an individual, and we raise awareness for mental health, wellness, and suicide prevention. That's what that specific run is all about. And last year we were able to meet our goal and raise $100,000 to keep these programs moving forward. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. With you mentioned a little bit earlier a little bit about your nervous system and how that affects exactly where you are, because your nervous system, when you go to these traumatic events, is always firing. Do you want to dive in a little bit deeper on kind of that side? I feel like a lot of people, they think about, oh, these people have PTSD, right? These people deal with traumatic events in their life, but they don't really think about the why. They don't think about you're showing up to these horrific scenes in some cases for first responders. The military has its own whole set of possibilities of what you're seeing there. And so where does the nervous system kind of play into that whole?
So I'll just throw my clinician hat on real
exactly.
Quick, right? And so, being able, to sit down and relate with these veterans and first responders is humbling and very rewarding for me to be able to lend a hand from that clinical perspective. But again, to help them understand and normalize, right, these emotions and these feelings that are kind of engulfing them, and help them get a better understanding. So the parasympathetic, in the nervous system, right, if you look at these men and women, they're in overdrive continuously, right? Now, when you go overseas, right, you're palletized, you're on RF1 status, right? You go worldwide, you're 18 hours, you drop in a location, you set up your fob, your talk, you have a salient set, you have a mindset, you understand what you're out there doing, right? And then you pack up, when you're completed with that deployment, and then you come home, right? After those OCONUS ops. And there's time, right? The difference is, nothing less, nothing more, right? And this is where you have a lot of crossover and similarities with your military veterans and your first responders, because a lot of your first responders are your military veterans, right? Much like myself, and then vice versa. And so the hypervigilance that sets in when you're here as a first responder, whether you're an EMT, paramedic, firefighter, police, what you're exposed to, and let's just say, hey, the polyvagal theory is that parasympathetic and sympathetic fighting, right? Bring you back down to that homeostasis, those tonic levels. It's almost like that feeling, you can relate when you're playing hide and seek as a kid, right? You're in a good spot, and you can, they're getting closer, you can feel the footsteps, and you're like, you don't have to tell yourself to sweat, or you don't have to tell your heart to beat faster.
Your body just does that naturally.
Right, of course. And so that's constant, right, with the types of incidents that these first responders in our military are exposed to. So as a first responder, you're getting that, right? You're coming off of a vehicle pursuit, right? And you're going home to your Thanksgiving meal with your family within hours, right? So I call it the light switch theory, right? It's the polyvagal theory, but it's your autonomic nervous system going up and down. It's revved high, and it's coming back down. And so it's that hyper state of vigilance that it's always in. And then you're at motor vehicle fatality, and you're looking at carnage. And then you're going back to your 3-year-old's birthday party within hours, right? And you're getting called back out for a homicide. And again, you're looking at a crime scene. Or now maybe you've been assaulted, right? Or you're clearing up a domestic. And then within hours, you're going back to your family, right? And so playing those multiple roles back and forth takes a toll, right? Not only on your physiology, but mentally too. And they say, depending on what research you're looking through, within 3 to 4 years, you're a changed individual, right? And you can sit there and say that you're okay, but human nature, right? We need to talk about that. So that's why you hear the term breaking the stigma, right? Before it was, hey kid, what did you think you signed up for, right? And so there was a lot of internalizing. And then in the military too, in those types of units, they teach you to be a quiet professional, right? So being open and talking about it and breaking that stigma of, hey, it's not a sign of weakness, right? It's a sign of being forward-thinking and a visionary and understanding and trying to relate to, hey, why is my body reacting this way?
Yeah.
And so we take that in a leadership perspective, right? Our chiefs out there, right? Our executives out there. Every leadership class you get exposed to, they say, hey, you got to take care of your people. Right? It's so cliche. Well, how do you take care of your people? And then you talk to a lot of these chiefs and these execs, and they say, hey, my attrition rates, why can't we hold on to people? Right? We're short-staffed. We're continually being told to do more with less. Well, how do you hold on to these individuals, right? You have to really start paying attention to their mental health and wellness, and provide the mechanisms, right, and trainings to help them, have more longevity within this profession, because that's what this is. It's not a job, it's a profession, right? Military and first responders, right? It's not just a job, it's a profession. And there's certain certifications and criteria, right, that you have to acquire throughout the years, and certain training and CUs, right, to operate within compliance within those professions, and this should be one of them. And it is beginning to become one of them, right? Because, you train physically, and there's certain physical standards that they have to, retain throughout, yearly qualifications and training courses, and you should do the same thing, right, with your mental health and wellness. And I think in turn, you're going to see more longevity out of these first responders and your military personnel.
Yeah,
For sure.
What kind of... So when you're talking about like the physical things that people have to do over time, I know that there's different, you got to do X amount of like push-ups, be able to run 2 miles in under 20 minutes.
Yes, Cooper standards.
Yeah.
Cooper standards, yeah.
So there's a lot of physical requirements. What kind of mental health requirements do you think would be the ones that they should be striving for to make sure, right? Like what standards would you look at there?
I would look at, more, and that's what this is, right? It's the psychoeducational training, right? Just what we've talked about, right? Being educated on the emotional stressors and statistics of what you're exposed to normalize that stigma of it's okay to talk about this, right? Because we're so guarded as human beings, right? We don't hang our emotions on a laundry line for people to read, right? We're very guarded, and we share those emotions with a select few individuals that we feel comfortable speaking to, right? So we feel comfortable with those, right, that are like us, right? And so some of us, right, or most of us, a person bothers us and they've never even said a word to us. They've never done anything to us. We just know we're not clicking.
No.
Right? It's just not there. And so that forced primal instinct, helps us guard our emotions and internalize. And nothing grows healthy in isolation, right? And that's what happens to a lot of these, military veterans and first responders that have been exposed to these multiple traumatic incidents, and they start to internalize, right? And that's the way the physiology and the mental component work contemporaneously together, and just drives them away.
How much do you think military culture plays into that of the lack of individualization? Making. I was talking to my aunt and uncle over this past weekend. They both served in the Air Force for many years. They're still working on the base, just as civilians. How much my uncle mentioned that he had long hair when he went into boot camp, right? And he was told by the drill sergeant, hey, you're going to be first in the chair in the morning to get your hair cut. And he woke up and he just knew he wasn't going to play into any of their games of how do you want it or stuff like that. He was just I want it shaved off because I know they just want to make me feel like a number.
Yeah.
Right. How much of that culture of just, you got to fit in with everybody, we're going to just make you not feel like a person, you're going to be a part of the U.S. military, right? How much of that culture plays into the lack of feeling like you can talk about it, right? The lack of, I don't want to share my problems because that makes me stand out compared to everyone else.
Yeah, no, I think that, one thing that the units I was attached to in the military, it's that culture, right? It's the culture that's set, and it's very difficult, and I don't know if I'll ever find it, right? It's that camaraderie and sense of inclusion, of belonging. So it was actually a good thing for me, at the Ranger Regiment, and some of those great leaders that surrounded me. Yeah, of course, it's going to break you down in some of these selection processes.
Yeah.
And bring you and build you back up together, just to show the resilience that sits inside you. And a lot of people don't recognize that, right? And so that military philosophy of, hey, you can do more than what you think you're capable of doing. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it instills a lot of sense of pride, but unfortunately, a lot of these military veterans, it doesn't hit them till later in the years, right? And they start to reminisce and they start to look back. But then those that get it right away. So I would say, yeah, the haircut, right? It's the culture, but a lot of it is being that quiet professional, right? And going above and beyond. And that culture is a healthy culture that helps with resilience when I came back into the state police, right? Because you yearn for that camaraderie, you yearn for that inclusion. And I think that any leadership in any organization can control that culture, right? And so I think that that's a good thing. But I think organizations, whether you're military and a first responder organization, need to be cognizant of that. And when you ask, hey, what's your culture? What's your culture here?
Yeah.
Right? What is the norm that you set, right? Because you create that. That's not created by one person. And so, the haircut is just the start of it, right?
Yeah.
That's just breaking you down, right? And that's taking the lawyer, the school teacher, the pro NFL player,
Evening them out.
and you're evening them out and saying, hey, right, we're all starting with a clean
Yeah.
slate. Let's see what you're made of, right? And so I think that's a healthy growth. Now, you can't do that here in the civilian world, right? Hey, everybody's going to shave their head, right?
I think that's a great way to reframe the conversation and reframe it, because I think exactly how you just mentioned it is not how I normally think of it, right? I think of it as just breaking you down so you don't feel right, but the breaking you down so you feel built back up, right? How do you guys deal with, at Camp Resilience specifically, do you feel like people are still looking to, when they leave military or first responder or whatever it is, right, do you feel like they ever are looking to be broken down again so that they can be built up in the civilian life that they're about to lead? Or do you think they're just still looking for that military camaraderie that they were having?
I think all of the above, and I think a lot of it is every chapter that you go through, right? This is a chapter for you right now,
Yeah.
right? You're going to go through another chapter and another change eventually throughout your life journey, and I think it's the identity. So if you have a long, term retired military veteran, and the same thing with a first responder, when you start gearing up for retirement, and looking at identity beyond the badge, or beyond the uniform, I should say, that's really where that mental component starts coming into play, and it's vitally important that we pay attention to that in the transition, but really, the shaving of the head and yearning for that camaraderie, it's the identity change, right? I will always, the life lessons and leaders that taught me in my early 20s, again, that paved the foundation for my law enforcement career and how I live my life, right? For me, that was an epic change into manhood, right? I was very humbled in those units in the military, and I ate a piece of humble pie every day, right? And it gave me a better perspective, I think, coming out. And then, finishing my education and getting into a professional organization with the state police. But in hindsight, I look back at that transition, and this is where a lot of them will struggle, right? So I went into another paramilitary organization, right? So I was selected to be part of the New Hampshire State Police. And in turn, I was on the SWAT team. So in essence, I got my BDUs back, right?
Yeah.
And I got my firearms back. And so the transition wasn't so drastic, right? So I look at this in hindsight and say, hey, with not even really understanding what I was doing, this helped ease my transition, right, coming out of the military.
You didn't go from here to here. You didn't go from 100 to 0,
Yep.
right? You went down the mountain a little bit slower.
And so that helped with the transition. And of course, you let SWAT go, and then the uniform comes off, and right around 2008, right now I'm in plain clothes and business attire for the majority of my career, right before I became a young lieutenant, and then back in a uniform. So in essence, and in hindsight, I look back and say that was a healthy transition, right? So that eased in the transition throughout these various chapters post-military. But if you're a veteran, right, and I'll speak for myself here, but I can imagine, based off of stories and testimonies that I hear, they are very proud of their service to their country, and they will always hold that with them, right, and hold themselves to a certain standard, regardless of the mental anguish and struggles that they encounter. Because from a scientific lens, right, and from a clinical lens, they're battling a lot of other issues too, right? And so that's unfortunately sometimes just a bad combination that really smothers the struggle and resiliency with some of these first responders and veterans. So yeah.
Switching gears just a little bit over to what does Camp Resilience offer that a clinical office and just like the standard modes of therapy? What does Camp Resilience offer in that those might not be able to in helping people deal with what they're going through?
Right.
And do you have any specific examples of that working for the benefit?
Yeah. Yes. Again, as we spoke of earlier, right, we're not coming in to do an intake, right? We're not seeing where your insurance is at. We're not doing an 8-step EMDR therapy approach, right? So the modalities and the approach that Camp Resilience uses, it's that peer-to-peer. Out of those 3-prong approach that we use, it's the peer-to-peer that's the magic recipe, right? Because now, much like we talked about earlier, you're in a room with like-minded individuals that have all shared similar type experiences, and it's a safe zone. It's a safe zone. Everything in there is confidential, right? It stays with that specific group. It stays with those facilitators that come in, because we do have licensed clinicians that come in and facilitate these programs with us for the 3 to 4 days. And that peer-to-peer essence, that camaraderie that you're getting back in this room, right, of individuals that have been through similar experiences is what unveils that emotional barrier that a lot of them aren't able to be exposed to on the day-to-day job that they're in, right? When you're in your uniform, right, you're not going to come in and express what's going on at home, express what's going on or what happened this weekend, or express the fact that you just polished off a gallon of vodka, this weekend by yourself, right? Because you have these haunting memories. And so it's that peer-to-peer element that Camp Resilience offers that is, I think, very crucial and vital to the wellness and healing journey. And a good story for that is I had a young officer. He was just starting a family. He had his firstborn on his way. He was 2 tours in Iraq, a young Marine, and he stood up and he said something in our program when we were having our group wrap-up session. And to see the bond that he had in there with the other individuals was amazing. And he shares a story, right, of almost ending his life, right, because of this battle and these demons that are haunting him. And he shares experience of the lack of understanding of why he was having these emotions, right? And again, that's where our facilitators and our clinicians come in and say, no, these are normal feelings, right? These are normal emotions, and this is why you're having these emotions. And they break it down and they normalize it, right? Mm-hmm. And so it helps them grasp hold of why they have this thought process. But this young officer and Marine said, I was at such a low point, I thought that I didn't realize that I thought I was alone on this island, right? But I didn't realize that there was a tribe on this island. And it was just, you listen to that testimony and you're like, wow. Yeah. And when people say, hey, what is it that you do at Camp Resilience? Tell me about Camp Resilience. I don't really understand it. What is it that you do? And it's simple, right? I just look back and it's easy for me to say because I've seen it. And I've gotten phone calls and I've had conversations with participants that have come through our program. We are saving lives, right? And you don't know how many lives you're saving, but I can tell you that the doctors and the psychiatrists that are on our boards, right, we're partnered with UNH and their program over there. We run our quantitative data, right? We do exit surveys. We do 3-month surveys. We have surveys for surveys, right? And we map out what we're measuring for Matrix to make sure that our organization is moving in the right direction. And on top of that, our funding in our nonprofit, we have 8 to 84 cents to the dollar goes right back to these programs. And so that allows us to partner with these other professional organizations and continue this great work that we're doing. But the measurable data, right? Science doesn't lie. Yeah. So it's great to say, hey, we measure loneliness, right? And this is what it says. We measure sleep, right? And a lack thereof. We measure anxiety and depression, and we measure resiliency, right? And so when you look at that, and you look at loneliness, there's a significant decrease in loneliness out of our program based off of our quantitative data that we measure. And the same thing with resiliency. There's a significant increase in resiliency. There's a decrease in loneliness, right? And so those categories that we measure, and then there's a significant decrease in lack of sleep, right? So that's all good. So they're sleeping better, right? They're becoming energized and more resilient. Depression is going down, right, based off of surveys and data that we collect. So that's a good thing, right?
No, I love the quantitative data and the stories that came of that, and my brain instantly latched on to the idea of there's a tribe on the island, right? You might not have experiences that, as a society, we all share, right? But there are other people who know those experiences that you're going through, right? There's the old poem quote story of no man is an island, right? I like the idea of having a tribe on your island, though, right? Like that is what we're working towards. We're building is that you're working for that community on that island, going through exactly what you're going through. And if people want to join one of those communities or tribes, right? They want to get involved in one of your retreats. Yeah. How does one do that?
CampResilience.org, right? You get on our website. It's very easy to see the volunteer tab on there or all of our programs that we run. Every single program that we're running, including our major fundraising events, are all on our website. So if there is a program in there that you want to attend, you get on there and you apply. There's a little registration application process, and then our program coordinator will reach out to you.
Is there any requirements for who can attend any of these events?
Yeah, veteran or a first responder, right? And so if there's not a program on there that you see that would be fitting for you or your family or your organization, then you reach out and let us know, and we can customize something for you. And we get a lot of that as well, too.
That's awesome. What's an example of one of those custom?
Well, the bushcraft. Yeah. You know, the outdoors and the retiree retreats that we're running this weekend. We're getting a lot of requests for couples and caregivers. So caregiver. Therapeutic program for the caregivers is a good one. And we're looking at, spousal therapeutic programs as well. So you get a lot of these programs when in the military, when there's a deployment, right, those spouse groups come together. And we don't have a lot of that in the first responder realm. So we're looking at bringing that in. And so that's been on the forefront here this past year of, hey, let's look at a spousal program for the spouses, right, of our first responders and our military veterans. So that'll be up and coming. Yeah.
They need support just like anybody else. Their partners are going through hell, and they need to be able to come together and talk about how do we help our partner, and
so do they.
Yeah.
So do they, so it's like, you look at, like I said, hey, I'm very fortunate because my wife is my rock, right? So we've been together since we were 14. A lot of the first responders and military veterans don't necessarily have that, right? So that's an anomaly. That's unique. It's not as common as we would hope it would be.
Yeah.
And so, that helps having her, to push through all of this with me.
You wrote on LinkedIn that I'll be happy once this mission is complete, once the shift ends, once we handle the crisis. Yet the heartbeat of resilience lies in thriving amid the chaos. To my fellow veterans and first responders, let's rewrite the narrative. Celebrate the victories along the way, no matter how small. Break free from the cycle because today matters. And you wrote that on your LinkedIn. How much of that mission complete mindset is still baked into these people, and is it something you feel like can be unlearned, or do you feel like it's something that should be unlearned?
I guess I look at it through a different lens, because it is all about mindset. Right?
1,000%.
It's about mindset, and it's about having that resilience and perseverance to pull through, right? In all my leadership roles, with all my teams, with all my teammates, it's having that mindset and the little victories, right? This was like, I go back to my military selection processes. I'll go to the JFK Special Warfare Center in SEER, right? Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape at Camp McCall at Bragg, and I remember listening to one of our guest speakers out there. And he talks about the little victories, right? When you're in captivity for 7 years, right? You go through this mock-up SEER school, and you're in captivity for, a very small, a couple weeks during the course, and that process. But you listen to these individuals that are in captivity for 7 years, and they talk about those small victories, right? It's we're not worried about next year. Let's get through the next hour.
Yeah.
Right. Let's get through today. And that's what I mean by that is, hey, celebrate the victories along the way, no matter how small, right? Because you need that, and that helps strengthen your mindset. Because when you're alone in your bathroom, brushing your teeth in the morning or at night, and you're fighting these thoughts, right? You don't have to be a veteran or a first responder. It's that mindset and perseverance, right, of having that win-win mentality no matter what. And I think that celebrating the small victories along the way, right, you take it day by day. When you're really struggling, you have to refocus that mindset and think about, hey, what am I going to do in the next hour that's going to get me through?
Yeah.
Right? And those small victories you need to celebrate, because that's what matters. Much like these runs, these 222-mile journey, it starts with the first step.
So on the 222-mile run, you're doing it again this October. How many miles are you running a day? Because you do it, you said the 1st through the 30th?
Yeah, so my training consists of, anywhere between, depending on whether I'm tapering or not, between, 50 and 90 miles a week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but this year we're going to open it up. We're opening up legs, because a lot of the response I got last year from these veterans and first responders are, hey, Jeff, love the cause. I absolutely love what you're doing, but I don't like to run anymore. I hate running, and I've had 3 surgeries on my knee, and I'm not going to run. So what can we do? So we're going to bring in some legs.
Okay.
For road marching and rucking, they call it, and we'll have some canine portions and walking legs, right, for other organizations to sponsor along the way. So we're trying to get more of the community involved that way, and so I think that'll bring a new specialty to that event in particularly, and help us just embrace the community. But that in itself was, hey, this is my first year in this role. How am I going to get out and shake hands and talk about Camp Resilience and what our program offers to our community? And that was perfect because, and I'll tell you, they set the bar high up in north of the Notch, Colebrook, Pittsburgh, Columbia, Lancaster. I had schools out there, entire schools out there. I had teachers, I had educators, I had town officials, town managers. Hey, I was in the Navy. Hey, our principal was a Marine. Hey, the kids, I want to be a police officer. But great conversations about mental health and wellness and the awareness, that's improving throughout the Granite State. And we do things right. When you have all the way up to the governor's level, right, supporting and recognizing the importance of mental health wellness for our military and first responders and our entire community at that sake. That sits well, as a Granite Stater with me, not just a veteran and a first responder, as a father, as a husband, all of the above, knowing that you have support from the top. And, she's looking at running the last couple miles again this year.
My gosh.
In that race, so.
Were you just like a fan of running before this? Like 222 miles, my gosh.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate that you did it. I think it was a great idea, and I'd love to hear that there was so much community support throughout it. Layla's over there groaning and grunting.
Yeah.
My dogs do that too. But I just... It leaves me in awe that you would do that to support and to raise awareness for any cause, because my wife and I have done 2 5Ks in our life, and every time I'm just like, why am I doing this by the end? And I'm sure you maybe had some of those thoughts during that, but
it was great. Endurance, as an endurance athlete, I'm a weekend warrior, right? That's your outlet. So, and I always tell these kids, I was going to say these young professionals starting off in their careers, whether it's military or first responder role, you have to have an outlet. You have to have an outlet outside of work, right? That's healthy with any profession that you're doing, right? It's that balance of spiritual, mental well-being and physical well-being. And really that's the magic recipe, is to ensure that you don't get lost in your work, right? You need that outlet. And for me, it was running. And I can tell you, out there in the community, I'm looking forward to the run coming back this year for our second annual run. Embracing the community members, walking with us, seeing the canines in there. But I was, there were some dark, lonely roads up in the mountain region, and coming through Lancaster, and I was very blessed and fortunate, and I'll give a shout out for our, all the law enforcement agencies in the state of New Hampshire, state police, county, and all the municipalities that held cruiser lights behind me the entire distance, right? It was wonderful, and I can't thank them enough. But I was coming through the mountains of Lancaster, and I had a stranger coming in the opposite direction in a truck, and just pulled over very abruptly as I was running towards him. And there was no cameras, there was no lights. It was pretty remote location, and this lumberjack of a man jumps out of the truck with a massive beard, and I didn't know really what was going on. And of course, I instantly reached down to my hip, and I'm like, I'm running, and I'm looking back at the cruiser behind me, and I'm like, are you seeing this? And he rips open his tailgate, and he pulls out this monster American flag. He turns around, snaps to attention, raises the flag, and salutes me. As I approached him, I'm like, this is what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
And thanked me for what I was doing. And I'll never forget that. It just hit me. It was so close to home. And I'm like, this is why we're doing this. This is all part of it. And what I'm doing is nothing compared to, there's so much great work from other individuals and other organizations being done out there. We're just part of the mission. So
1,000%. I have a couple rapid fire questions for you before we get you out of here. What's one word to describe your work?
Resilient.
Can't use the word in the definition, though.
Yeah.
I think that does perfectly describe what you guys are doing, and it perfectly describes who it sounds like you are from just this short conversation of getting to know you. You said that running is a part of one of the ways you cleared your head whenever you were working. What's the best place in New Hampshire to clear your head?
Oh, north of the Notch.
Okay.
Anywhere north of the Notch, you want to take a break, it's Diana's Bath, for sure.
Where's that at?
It's up north.
Okay.
Yeah, just north of Franconia, yeah.
I'm new to New Hampshire. For my wife and I have lived here now about a year and a half.
Yep, Diana's Bath and Arethusa Falls. Go see Arethusa Falls.
Okay.
Up in the Kank, for sure.
Perfect. What was harder? Army Ranger training, state police leadership, nonprofit paperwork?
Nonprofit paperwork.
It just is so confusing sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. Yeah.
What instantly puts you in a better mood? Besides Layla, obviously. Family? Okay.
Yeah, yep. Family. Hearing their voices, smelling home. Yeah, for sure.
And you have 2 sons?
2 sons, yep.
And a wife?
And a wife, yep.
Oh my gosh.
My younger son, Caden, is off to Keene State next year. So,
wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you a campfire person or a front porch person? Campfire
all the way. Yeah.
Any reason why?
Love the smell, and it relaxes me. The crackle of the fire. We used to call that Ranger TV.
I love that.
Yeah.
What's the most overrated form of self-care?
Overrated. I hate to say it, I'm probably going to get yelled at, but yoga.
Yoga? Why do you say that?
It doesn't sit with me. Yeah. A lot of people just instantly will talk, yoga for mindfulness, right? And unfortunately, it just doesn't work for everybody. But for a lot, it does, so I'm not bashing.
Yeah, but for me, overrated, for me, it would be taking a bath.
Yeah.
I'm not a bath person, so like that mindfulness just doesn't happen there. I'm just like, this is weird.
Yeah.
After like 10 seconds, I'm like, no, thank you. Yeah. What's the most underrated form of self-care for you?
Ooh. Meditation.
Yeah. Don't do it enough?
Don't do it enough. Journaling. Don't do it enough, right?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like sitting in silence.
Yeah.
I always have music or something going in the background.
Yeah.
And just like taking a second to no noise.
Yeah.
And just resting. I think that's huge. What's one thing that civilians misunderstand about veterans?
That we have college degrees.
In what? Just like in general that being a veteran equals...
Unfortunately, there's a stigma out there. As far as, being educated. So I say that, very lightly.
Yeah.
And in good fun, but yeah. But if looking at it from a deeper lens, I think it's the perseverance that we hold deep down inside because, you look at perception and interpretation are ambiguous creatures. I would leave it at that, right? So be aware of that. So, yeah, for sure.
Last question that we've been asking everybody. What gives you hope?
These discussions. Right?
Yeah.
These discussions right here. That's what gives me hope. Hearing these discussions, from the governor's level all the way down here in the Granite State. The phone calls, the emails, the testimonials, that breeds hope and tells us that, we're doing good work over here. And it's not just Camp Resilience. It's all these VSOs out there, all the other organizations doing a tremendous amount of work. The awareness level is becoming more prominent out there. And I firmly and honestly believe that we are saving lives, and it matters. It matters having these discussions and doing these outreaches. And your program here is saving lives because someone's listening to this, and they're going to benefit from it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Really meant a lot to have this conversation. So
for sure.
Thank you so much.
All right.
After talking to Jeff today, he helped reshape some of my cultural thoughts I had about the military. I truly did have the thought that the military just breaks you down to a number so that way you become easier to move. Not that they break you down so they can build you back up. He did a really good job of helping me understand some of the more military culture side of things that I never knew. My dad served 29 years in the military. I have aunts and uncles who have served in the military. I have a long list of family members and history going to military bases and being a part of that military culture that I didn't fully understand, partially because I was probably too young to understand, but also just because that wasn't talked about. And that's where the problem lies. Military culture and military folks don't always know when to talk about it. They don't know who to talk about it with, and that's exactly what Camp Resilience is here for. They're here to give people peer-to-peer connection, to help when people are struggling with mental health. You can go to campresilience.org to learn more about some of their events and what they do at Camp Resilience. You can also find us online. Subscribe and follow so you don't miss what's coming next. You can find us at pphnh.org or on socials at pphnh. This conversation, as they all do, went long. The full video is on our YouTube. Better Together is a partnership for public health production. It is written by me, Tessa, and Emma, which is why every time I go off script, I get a glare from our team that definitely didn't use AI to write this. Our producers are myself, Emma Peterson, with technical direction from Tessa Donahue. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.